Board of Education. Mr. Roberts, if you would call the roll.
Ms. Barnes?
Present.
Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. George?
Here.
Mr. Kruger?
Present.
Ms. Talley?
All right, and if everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah.
And are there any additions or deletions to the agenda this evening?
No, sir, there's not.
All right, so I'm going to need a motion to approve the agenda this evening.
Move. Second.
Motion, and I got a second. Mr. Roberts?
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. Okay, motion passes 4-0. And we're going to move on to our presentations this evening. So first up, we have a district mental health program, and it's going to be Mrs. Kaya Hunt and Mr. Danny Morales.
Is there a PowerPoint for this?
There is, it should be on there.
See it on there, yeah.
Yep.
So as we're waiting for Mr. Roberts to pull up the presentation, we just want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present on the mental health plan. We have spent quite a bit of time putting this together, and because of the additions that we had to the mental health team with the additional mental health counselor and the BCBA, and then the additional position that Danny will be taking over, we believe that the mental health plan is actually one that is, thank you, one that is actually going to be able to service all of our students and either service them in the building or provide them with the resources in which to service them if we are not able to. So on the first slide here, you're going to notice that we kind of give a brief overview of where we've been as related to the mental health program. Prior to 2012, and I won't read each of these to you, it is on the board docs. I believe it is a public document for those that are listening through the podcast. But prior to 2012, the district had one behavior specialist and then the shared counselors, and that was the extent of our mental health resources. The behavior specialist only worked with our special ed students and those students that had the services written into their IEP. And the school counselors then would do small groups and sessions and individual counseling as needed. Moving into 13-14, we received clinical counselors from Nationwide Children's Hospital under a grant, and that has continued through now. We actually are hoping to have 4 counselors, one at each building, into next year. Right now, it looks like we're going to start with 3, again, dependent on our recommendations, referrals that would increase that number. And we strongly believe, we've been talking with them, that we strongly believe we need 4 to start the year. And I'd like to mention, I'll let Danny introduce himself.
Yeah. Hi, Board of Education, good evening. So I'm Mr. Morales. I'm one of the mental health specialists in the district.
How do you spell your name?
Morales. And first name's Danny. So I've been working in the district now for 6 years and going on 7 years. So I'll be the mental health specialist at the high school full-time next year, and we'll talk about those positions in a little bit. But yeah, I just am excited to be continuing to be a model program in terms of our district mental health. And yeah, like she was speaking to, yeah, we've had support from Children's Hospital, and them being in each building, one person per building will be a huge impact for us.
So that ties in then to, in 2018, we began our relationship with Ohio State University and their clinical counseling program, which Danny had went through. If you recall, those of you that were here, Dr. Dunn began the program with us. That was in 2018, and at that time, we placed probably 2, and then we just have continued to place them. Next year, we are planning on placing 4, if we can find 4. Again, it's the same problems that we have of finding those who are going into the clinical clinician with the mental health and who would also fit in the school. So that's one thing Danny will be responsible for. He makes sure that those who we place are somebody that would want to stay at the school and be able to work in the school. Moving on to 2020, we hired a full-time social worker. And then in recent years, we just mentioned we went from having just a couple of the mental health counselors to now having hopefully one in each building, or we do have one in each building, but then the interns, then we would have one in each building is the idea. So what it does is it places 3 individuals that are specific to the mental health work. So the Nationwide Children's Hospital, the mental health counselor, and then the intern. 3 individuals at each building is just phenomenal that we're able to do that. And then in addition, we have the BCBA, which is the behavior specialist, who is able to not only work with the mental health team, but go into classrooms, be able to help teachers with behaviors, be able to provide professional development, assist and ask the right questions to determine is the behaviors related to mental health or is it something that's completely unrelated, and then to move that individual on to where they would need to go, whether it be just with our school counseling or if it needs to go into the mental health counseling or even outside services. So I'm going to let Danny talk about the proposed position here. That would be Danny. I want to just make sure it's understood that it's not a new position. So what we're asking is for a stipend. One of the things currently, myself and Brooke Hippler oversee the mental health program, and truly we do our best, but we're not the expert. And so we've talked with Danny, and he is already supervising the interns that we have. That comes with a big job. But then also being able to oversee the entire program, being the liaison that then will work with the counselors, work with the BCBA, work with Brooke as the director of special ed, and then also work with the mental health counselors and the interns.
Correct. So the proposed position, if you kind of look through here when it talks about the restructured, so I've brought in the interns this year, and I've had 3 interns this year already in the building from Ohio State University and through Capital and through Dayton. And the current partners. So after the school day, I'd be providing direct clinical supervision for all the interns. So what that's required through their graduate program as well. So that's extra time I'd be putting in other than seeing my own caseload of students at the high school. And I would do monthly meetings with our team at minimum. I mean, and that can be higher depending on needs, depending on, we've had so much, loss, tragedy, events, even like, just pandemic, COVID, all the coping. If we need to meet more than just once a month, then we would do that, right? Preparing board reports as well in terms of referral numbers, students we've serviced, trying to get more PD in for the school days. I mean, I think we've seen that trauma has impacted not just, all of us as adults, but also all the students as well through loss. So we need to keep doing more of that. Preparing more of those like quarterly reports, just more of those details so you guys can see how we're servicing the kids here. And in terms of working with the universities, I'm going to keep those solid connections with Ohio State, Capital, et cetera, so we can keep that solid flow of interns going through. Because I want it to be not just an intern, but somebody who's going to be working well in schools and who has a desire to want to work in, student mental health. So, and then in terms of the liaison piece of it, I want to try and be that connecting piece. I've been here the longest out of everybody. I think it makes the most natural sense. I know the program well. And, although I haven't been employed through Children's Hospital, I also know that program well enough, Nationwide Children's, how they operate and function. So yeah, and then in terms of my own caseload and my own responsibilities, I have my own caseload at the high school, like I spoke about, and then let's say there's emergencies, crises, anything like that, I'd get called upon to help with those situations, suicide ideation, severe depression, anxiety, et cetera. And so this requires additional duties outside of my contractual time. So that's why we're proposing this. But if we look at the needs, and it's listed down in the bottom right, she puts through, everything we've been going through the past couple years, and then anxiety, depression levels have been increased. And I do not foresee this getting stable and steady here right away, one day to the next. I think it's going to be something we're going to continue to deal with. So we want to get ahead of that and be an example. So.
The other piece that Danny will be presenting for you each month is there will be a new addition for a mental health report in the board reports. So he will be creating the report. So you will now see how many students are being serviced by Nationwide Children's, by our own mental health counselors, our interns, which I think will just help you to then see a monthly report of how what we're doing. That's something that Brooke has always included, not as detailed, maybe twice a year because it's when we get the results, but it will be something that you would then have monthly.
So the current structure is basically each school, the administrators at the school actually supervise the mental health specialists that are at the school currently.
Correct.
And so what we're doing by making this move is then Mr. Morales, then they'll all basically direct report to him, indirect report into the administrators, so dash line to the administrators.
Correct. And our administrators will still do the evaluations with,
Okay.
so the building administrators and Brooke Hippler will do the evaluations, but the reporting would be to Danny. So almost
Okay.
like, I guess I envision it like the coaching world, almost like assistants to coaches,
Right.
but then coaches to then the AD.
And then Mr. Morales would report up through Brooke.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Great question. So I wanted to make sure to highlight that. Moving on to the next slide, one of the things that and I've been here since the inception of the mental health counselors and Dr. Dunn, and I've been in the meetings that we've had to discuss, and I was very confused about what each position did. For example, in the past, prior to this next school year, Danny's position and the others were titled behavior specialist. So anybody would believe, and I believed, oh, well, yeah, you're going to help with behavior as well as mental health. And what we found as going through this process, and especially me, is Danny's like, I really only see IEP kids. I would see the kids that are, dealing with high trauma or emergency need and get them to the resources, but I don't have the time to to be able to work with all the students that are having crises. So we put this together so that it was very clear who would see what students and how they would be referred. And you can, again, won't read it to you, but you can look at your packets, and those of you listening online can pull it up. But you can look at what their certification is and then who they would work with. So for the most part, the mental health, which is the title change that we have, will work with students mostly on IEPs. And then Nationwide Children's would work with our high-level students, general education students, and then our interns would be responsible and help us with all of the above. They could take small groups. All of these positions would do small group work. But they each have their own niche, and then they would help out as needed. The other piece about our school counselors and our mental health counselors is they do not see students through the summer. So what happens is if a student is needing services through the summer, they refer to Nationwide Children's, who still continues the services through the summer. And then as school starts back up, they would either come back to us, or depending on the need, they may stay with Nationwide Children's.
So I have a question about, so AdamH provides a grant to Children's, which is for support services. It's not for what Children's normally does, because Children's does general education, general services, high-level students. They don't typically work with support services. It's not like one of their niches. So they don't bill for that. So how do you ensure that the grant money gets used for support services and it doesn't go unused? Because my understanding is we got a lot of money for support services that didn't get used.
For the because Children's Hospital will do a lot of prevention money, I think is what you're speaking to, right? And so that gets solicited, I think through full district, and then the elementaries are using a good amount of funding through, I know they've done like emotion regulation boxes for teachers to utilize, other presentations programs, speakers. But yes, to your point, we could be using the money more at the middle high level. I agree. And I've actually spoken with Ed and Mogus, who's their supervisor, Children's Hospital supervisor, and we've gone through some ideas and some thoughts of how we want to utilize, because we don't want that to go to waste. I agree with you.
Because it's kind of a use it or lose it program.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that, I think, is the lack of understanding of our model prior. So it would be, now that Danny's in place, then him and Ed have this relationship, can work together. It's filtered through Brooke. Brooke has gone to the building principals and maybe said, hey, what do you need? This is prior to, I will say, probably the last 2 or 3 years we've been using it and having the conversations about using it. But prior to that, I truly believe there's been a little bit of a disconnect in how we're determining that. And it's just the unknown. So having Danny in this position, that's going to be a super help for us to look at what is needed and where we can best use those funds.
So if there's other organizations out there that are offering 24/7 support services, 24/7 mental health services that you guys may not be able to do, but may be something that could be offered to our our students and their families. Are we looking at those? Because that can help maybe utilize some of those grant funds and some of the things that we need so that you're not spending so much of your time, and families could call somebody at 2 a.m. without calling a hotline. They could call a doctor that they're used to going to.
By 24/7, do you mean like telehealth services 24/7?
I know there's a couple other school districts that are utilizing a 24/7 offer to their students and families. And I know we haven't done it yet, but I'm just asking, have we looked at it?
So with the amount of funding that we've put into this, we have looked at our mental health program and how we can service our students that are in the classroom. So the one thing that Danny can speak on more, I'd like for you to, is that if we can't service a student in school, we match them up with a relationship with somebody that can. And so those are the resources that we as a school district are not able to do. And when you get into the telehealth, we're not a medical facility, so it makes it really tough. And so the funding that we have put into place here with the mental health program is actually servicing the students that we can service, and then anything that's above their level of being able to handle, they have the connections to be able to refer out.
Yeah. And so what she's speaking to there, let's say there's a student who has maybe more intensive like eating disorder or more intensive trauma to the level that wouldn't be appropriate for me to work with them during the school day. Because let's say I'm going to work with them and then, okay, we're covering this intense subject or topic. How can I expect them to go back to class right after that? It's not even appropriate, right? So for instance, for those, that's why the Children's Hospital connection is so critical, because then we want to link them with a more intensive therapist who just works with eating disorders, just works with trauma. And so we need to make those links for those kids. And I think I can do that more effectively even in this role, working right with Eden as my supervisor direct. But to speak more on the 24/7, you have to be mindful, I think we as even districts who are pursuing that, of liability too with 24/7 care. Who is that clinician who's seeking out to that? If it's weekends and other availability, let's say it's suicide ideation that comes up, who's the one who's handling it on the outside of school time? But in concept, it sounds good, yeah.
And just, we can probably talk about this a little more offline.
Sure.
But I'm not saying that the school should burden any cost to that.
Fair enough.
I'm saying that we should be able to provide those services to our kids. We have 25% minorities. A lot of those minority kids do not, and even majority kids do not have mental health services in their everyday, day-to-day insurance plans.
Right.
They may cover five appointments.
Yep.
And after that, you're on your own.
And what's wonderful, and to
Right.
that point, and I don't mean to interject at all, is that under my services and then under the interns, no billing, no costs associated with that support. And so I think that helps close that gap as well. And so we're ultimately servicing more kids because there's a massive shortage, as we know, in the nation of mental health professionals, which is something we're trying to remedy with this. But I agree, we have to do better.
Moving on to the next slide here, we just have a breakdown of the positions and where they're at. So it's another way of saying what we've already discussed, but just another visual. Excuse me, so you can see. And then,
That's a great visual.
I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm a visual. I mean, that just
Yeah.
kind of shows all of the resources and everyone that we have available to help students and families. I mean, I think that's,
Can we get that visual? It's not in our packet.
Yes, I will. It is on the board docs, but I will print it for you.
Oh, never
We
mind
tr-
then. I'll get it off.
I'll
the
get it.
board.
I can get it. And then moving on to,
It gives us a lot of capacity to flex if we need to support a specific school because we have an issue, so that's.
it does. And that's one thing that I'm glad you brought up the insurance piece, because that's another thing, like Nationwide Insurance, yes, they would mostly, Nationwide Children's would mostly support the general education students. However, if a student does not have insurance, then that's when they would come back to Danny or the intern. So there is some major flexing and to do what's best by the kiddos.
To that point, so when we do the screenings for suicide ideation for students, which we do at the high school and middle school level, let's say there's a kiddo who the insurance doesn't line up for whatever reason, I would never feel comfortable denying them support just because the insurance doesn't line up. So I would talk with Dr. Hippler after we would do some of those rollouts. It happened this year several times where there was 4 or 5 kiddos who the insurance we knew when they were doing the intake wasn't going to line up. And so I said, I have to take these kiddos on because they need to be seen in the school.
This is probably a bit outside of this conversation, so if it is, just say I'll get back to you later, and that's fine. But now that we're kind of we're moving into a more formalized structure, which I think is great. I assume we have action plans in place for if this or that happens, how do we support that? But I'm also sure that, in the structure that we're in, where it's kind of been a school by school environment, maybe they're school by school plans, or maybe it's a district plan that hasn't been updated. So can you talk to that just a bit?
We actually, you guys just met to review our current
Okay.
models. It is a district model. It's set more by middle school, high school, and then the elementaries, they do have some differences just depending on the school. But that is something that they review. They just spent time reviewing it, as well as working with Dr. Mike Bruning to ensure that the plan that we have in place for the district, the crisis plan, matches up to what we would have in those plans.
Okay. Thank you.
And then here's another picture of, or another diagram of what each building has again. So similar to the last one, another visual to show where each position is at, and then how we would oversee it. And then at the bottom you would, or over to the right, I'm sorry, on my page it's to the bottom, but then that shows who they report to. And the other piece, to the question that was just asked regarding the process. This is something too that Danny and our new BCBA is working on, to provide a referral form that's for every student. So it might be behavior in the classroom that's just the teacher's struggling with. It could be behaviors at home. It could be mental health concerns. And the process of the referral will go through the school counselors. So they would be able to put their eyes on each piece, and then they would facilitate that out to Danny, or if it's, specific to behavior, the BCBA. But that way the form is the same across the district. So that we don't have to train our staff to fill out different forms. It's all the same form. If certain things are checked, it kind of triggers us to know which way to go.
Are parents notified before we have a screening with a student?
In terms of screenings of this nature, I would say I'm going to speak to the suicide prevention program that we did. So for those, we provide a passive consent before we do any screening that speaks about here's the nature of the program, here's for mental health education. If you are not okay with or do not agree to have them be screened in this process, they can opt out for that particular screening.
But it's only for suicidal students. So what about other students who may want mental health, who you think you need to do screenings for? Are the parents in agreement for us to have a screening with their child for a mental health screening?
I would say that the parent needs to be okay with that happening.
But there's something in place to require a parent's approval before we do that.
And that's what we're working on, and that's what she spoke to. So when this is a lot of, and these are things, and I'm glad you're bringing these points up, because this is what has to be solid before we're implementing these programs. So for myself particularly, since we're having new staff come on board, we have to be solid in how everyone has to be knowledgeable of this is what the checkboxes look like. Parent has to be on board. All the stakeholders have to have it and know what's going to be going on in place, so we're not skipping steps.
And I'm trying to think, there may be, and my principals might give me a nod of a head if this is correct, but there may be a situation where a student did something that's extremely severe, and we have to screen them for certain things. And that would be something that we would not reach out to the parent first, because it is such an extreme situation. For instance, like a threat on a person or a building. Like it's extreme in the sense, or a threat on themselves. At that point, we would need to do a screening to make sure that the student is safe to, whether it be go home or whether it be
Stay in.
absolutely.
building,
Like
yeah.
those situations would be one where if it is an emergency situation and it's severe, we may not. But if it's something like where a teacher is referring a student before we would, the screenings, a lot of the times, just so you're aware, the screenings sometimes aren't in a conversation. It's based off of teacher observations, but before the student would be seen by the counselors, we would have parent permission.
To me, those are two separate.
100%, yes. Just making sure that was understood. And then moving here, we just talk about the professional development opportunities that we have hosted in the past on our mental health. And again, looking through those, something that we've done and we will continue to do. Community involvement opportunities, again, different community involvement that we have. The ESC Family Engagement Series, PBIS, Buddy Up for Life, Nationwide Children's Hospital, Fairfield County Family, and we could keep going. Here we have current student programming that we offer for mental health. You want to talk about any of those specifically?
So for specific, because it's the one I'm directly involved with for SOS, Signs of Suicide, we do that at the high school 2 times a year. And so I do one rollout in the fall and one rollout in the spring. And we work with the health classes to do that. So the health teachers actually provide that curriculum and they're trained on that. So it's a team model with the health teachers, the school counselors, and our team who go in. And then we do a brief screener for the students. They fill out a 7-question questionnaire for brief adolescent depression. It doesn't diagnose depression, but it just gives signs and symptoms they could be experiencing. Then we triage, quote unquote, the students and link them with counselors after that, should they present with symptoms of depression.
The other note just on here is the social skills class that is at Indian Trail. Beth Henshaw has been here to present on that multiple times. And we did add an additional position at the at Winchester Trail for next year. And we will be offering a Leader in Me class, which will it addresses those same skills. So just the next level of going. That was something that we had talked about in different meetings of saying, okay, we do it at K2, are we going to continue that up? So those are things happening. In addition, we have the focus periods at the middle school where we talk about social emotional wellness, student wellness, and then into the high school talking portrait of a graduate.
What do you do with Fairfield County? Is this Fairfield County Family what?
Previous slide.
Go back one.
I can't see my glass. I don't have
Oh, it just says
glasses on.
Fairfield County Family, and you mentioned it, but what what division of Fairfield County is that?
So Kim's not here. I believe that is the partnership with Nationwide Children's Hospital and Fairfield County. So if you recall, I believe it was the summer, Kim came and presented at some point in time in front of the board, and there was the relationship. So Nationwide Children's typically will focus on Franklin County, and they had built the relationship with Fairfield County so that we could service more students. Yeah, I can give you more information on that.
Do
from
we
Kim.
have a relationship with Franklin County Family Services too? Or is our relationship only with Fairfield County?
Yeah, I mean, we have the relationship with Franklin County Children's Services, but specific to the
Family Services, not Children's
family services. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can get that information for you. Okay, and then moving on to, here's just pictures so you can see our student wellness.
I just appreciate you guys' time. It's an important issue. I mean, for student mental health, and we've spoken to it, American Academy of Pediatrics, we're talking Surgeon General, everyone in the nation has spoken to how dire the situation is, and it's an emergency and crisis has been called. So what we're doing is taking steps in the direction of we're trying to support an attempt to get some sense of stabilizing with the kids.
Well, I'm happy to see that we're being proactive and making an investment long term in this. And I was going to ask some simple just follow-up questions, but I see we're expanding our interns. Have we had a lot of success bringing interns in, or are we having trouble finding those positions, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so in terms of the intern involvement, I try and work really hard to keep positive relationships with these universities. So I know the faculty and professors at both Capital and Ohio State particularly. So I do not foresee that being an issue moving forward because I have good rapport and relations there.
And I was excited when you had mentioned that, expanding this and bringing this new position in will allow you to kind of expand beyond just focusing on our special needs, our special ed population, because we know that the needs there have increased. So the ability to not only focus on them, but expand to all of our students, because we always talk about empowering all of them. So I'm excited that obviously in this new role, it'll give you a little bit more flexibility to try and meet all of our kids' needs, because we know that they're there and we know they're going to continue to increase. So we want to be able to meet them where they are. So yeah. I'm excited, and I'm definitely looking forward to all the good things you're going to be showing us over the next couple of years. So,
me too. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's all.
Morales, I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Please.
Is there an overall cost that is associated with this program today versus a 1 to 5 year plan rollout? For
The internship program? No cost associated with the internship program. And minus the substitute pay they would be receiving, the hourly.
Hourly rate of.
That should be $10 an hour. That's the only cost associated. Yeah, correct. Because they're working 20 hours a week they were getting paid $10 per hour, each of them.
Do we know how much we currently spend on mental health services for our school district?
I can get that.
The other piece is with the one.
Probably 10 different buckets.
No, it is. I mean, if are you gonna include school counselors in that? I mean, there's 8 positions there. We've probably got 15 positions total.
Paid
Average salary
full-time, paid.
65,000 with benefits. I mean, rough math, probably 800,000 plus.
That's just in salaries, but I was talking about programming, like, do we know where we're getting, if there's, and I could talk about this offline, it doesn't have to be today. I was just kind of wondering, like, do we get any outside revenues that support mental health services that we provide for our students? And do we have any kind of reporting specifically on that, like where we get money from to support the services that we provide to the students? And then what, in conjunction, like you're telling us all the services we're providing, but what do these services cost us other than teacher salaries?
Sure. Yeah. So what we do for our mental health, like my term is mental health specialist, which was previously behavior specialist, like she said. So we'll do the Medicaid in schools program. So that's how we get kickback money through the district, is billing through our team. Okay. So, but my team has only been it would been 3 of us as of this year. It was really just me billing for that for a long time, for about 4 years. Then we hired another person in for my team 2-3 years ago, 2 of us billing, 3 billing last year, and then next year we're going to have 4 people billing for that Medicaid in schools, just for the counseling team. But in terms of other people who bill underneath the Medicaid in schools program, school psychologists when they do testing, occupational therapists, like et cetera, they also bill as related services for kids.
But I think, I mean, it hasn't been a consolidated program at the district level. It's kind of been school by school. So I don't think that we haven't been going out and looking for grant funds for mental health services or anything like that. So that may be another opportunity as we expand the structure and make it a little more centralized. There might be an opportunity to maybe find some of those funds.
Because having like a foster child that comes to school here, I know that you can't double bill. So if he's already being seen by a counselor, but he needs counseling services, you can't bill. But he may need those services while he's here during that 8-hour day. So I'm just trying to understand a little bit more. How do we bill? How do we, I don't even know all the details.
No, you're right. And these are the loopholes, and these are the things that we hit these roadblocks. And you're like, oh my gosh, how can we not do double billing? Like, you hit all these different obstacles, right? It has to be smoother. We want to keep making it smoother. Yep, true.
And the reimbursements does not cover their whole salary. Like, it's just a portion of it, just so everybody knows. Like, it's not funding their whole position. So that's one thing.
This is not a revenue center for us.
It is not. No, and that's the piece.
can't
The
be.
mental health program is
Same time,
definitely
we got kids that need
a
help.
large cost to the district. Nick just said $800,000 probably ballpark, and that's just salary. So
The Medicaid reimbursement's anywhere from $130,000 to $160,000 per year.
So
I appreciate you putting this together, because I know we've been hiring and kind of just putting bodies out there to cover and to bring it together in one program, the MH team, bringing it together. It's very clean. It's a great start from having, I'm not going to say nothing, but to have very little
sparse.
structure.
It was very unstructured.
Till today.
Very good.
That's a huge jump, and it's only going to get better. And I'm proud as sit on the board to be a part of this, because this is the trend.
we're looking at it.
This trend is not going away, and this is just going to be. I think we could help be a benchmark for other districts to say, how are they doing it? So it's a great structure. So thank you. Appreciate all
Thank
your
you.
efforts.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morales. Thank you. And we're going to move on to our public comments this evening, our public voice. So it does look like we have one public voice. So the first person up is going to be Caitlin Stover, and is it Kayla Cole? Did I pronounce that right? Awesome, ladies. Hey, come on up. And just to be clear, 3 minutes, so we'll turn the clock on. You have 3 minutes to come up and speak to the board.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Kaylin Stover.
And my name is Kayla Cole. We are both rising seniors at Canal Winchester High School and would like to discuss with you the advantage of having a French 4 class in the upcoming 2022 to 2023 school year. The availability of a class is determined by the number of students who have enrolled to take a certain course. It is not possible for a French 4 class to meet these requirements because we had a small but still acceptable sized French 3 class last school year. The pandemic significantly dropped the amount of students enrolled in courses. One of the many areas that was hit by this issue was foreign language classes. Students in earlier levels of their language would not return due to the barrier of online and split classes. Today, as numbers easily return to Common Core classes and even earlier levels of foreign language, those of us who stuck through the chaos of COVID and are very passionate about continuing might not get the chance because of our number drop during the pandemic that we simply cannot fix at this level. We understand the need to grant resources to a larger number of students who need them. However, for the students such as ourselves, who wish to further our language knowledge and skills, we will lack the capability to grow, as we will lose a whole year of language until college and other opportunities. For example, in college, Kaylin and I both plan to pursue minors in French, which will become increasingly difficult with this gap.
And not only will French 4 allow students to grow, it may also help them graduate. As the class of 2023 and beyond, we are now required to obtain seals to graduate. One of these seals is the seal of biliteracy. French 4 can prepare students to take and pass the test that is needed to accomplish this seal. In less than a week, I will be traveling to Europe, including France, where I will be introduced to new cultures and new languages. Understanding the language of a foreign place is extremely important to do well in a new country and to enhance a traveler's experiences. And not only is language used around the world, it is also used right here in the United States, as well as in this school district. Last year, we had 3 students in our French 3 class who were from French-speaking countries and who also speak advanced French. They needed to be placed in French 4 to properly improve their skills, but there was not a French 4 class available last school year. Additionally, many jobs welcome the idea of knowing a foreign language to strengthen their business. With these reasons and more in mind, we ask that you consider allowing us, as well as other students, to continue our foreign language education and growth through providing a French 4 class for next school year. One small class can make a big difference on our impact on the future.
Merci beaucoup pour votre considération.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Appreciate you speaking to the board this evening. All right. And I do believe that is it for public voice this evening. So we're going to move on to our executive reports, and our first up is our treasurer's report this evening.
Good evening. I'm going to speak in English if that's okay. No foreign language for this guy.
See,
Well, this might be foreign
I still haven't mastered the main English.
It is finance, so.
Yeah,
That is a foreign language.
I'm going to be brief. We just had the forecast update last month. We're 1 month away from having the final month of the fiscal year. June 30th is approaching us quick. Another fiscal year in the books.
Can you blow that up just a little bit more? I can't see from way back here
in the
at the
children's
kindergarten table.
space. The small table.
Thank you.
That good?
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
So revenues, we continue to trend as we have forecasted. We're expecting to receive these 2 state payments in June. Probably have already received them. Then all other revenues, and we'll be right at our 49.4 million. Revenue or expenditures, as long as we're under these numbers, we'll be right on track. We look at year over year. It's really what we want to look at. Revenues are actually going to be down slightly over the year, $216,000. Expenditures only up $119,000 at this point. Big reason for that is we did move about 18 to 20 employees into the ESSER funds. This would have been significantly higher, but also to highlight a reason why this is down. We typically would have received this in this fiscal year, and we did not, so we should receive it next fiscal year. So this really should have been up $250,000 instead of down to 216.
And Nick, I think, did you say last month that typically we get that in one lump sum, but for whatever reason they decided to split it up this year?
Yep.
Was that the rationale?
Yeah, they paid it, they had been paying it all in the first payment, and this year they only paid it their first half, and then they'll pay the second half here the next time. We know why the state's down. That's been pretty well documented through the year. Kind of correlates with this purchase services of funding students directly, eliminating the open enrollment deductions, charter school deductions, all of those good things. So we're not really down $872,000. That was just really state foundation deductions that were taken out. So overall, still trending very well year over year. The forecast looked strong last month. We saw that. Investments still continue to be very mild. The market is coming back a little bit, but we're years away from where we were before pandemic. I mean, you can see these 2 years, 19 and 20, we were almost to $1 million. Last year with the pandemic, we started taking a dip, and we're going to be even lower than that. We'll be lucky to hit the 400, but I think we probably will because we have some maturities coming up in June. But you can see we cut our interest revenue in half. But slowly coming back. The 5-year investments look a little bit better. So hopefully we start seeing some of that come back. Insurance does actually continue to trend really well. I'll blow this up for you. Claims to be up 2% on the year over year. That's I mean, at this point, that's excellent. That's it's better than what we could have asked for. We had some high claimants extremely early in the year, right out of the gates. July and August in our stop loss year had high claimants to hit those, and then we've kind of slowed down. Knock on wood, but that's just a matter of chance a lot of the time. But it does show you, what it shows me is our employees value the insurance plan, and they really try to make good decisions, whether that be go to urgent care instead of emergency room or whatever. They're using the benefits best they can, because 2% is really, really good. Not sure where rates are going to be. We probably won't see a huge rate increase based on this data, as long as June comes in healthy. We'll probably be, and then we'll still have a couple months of data to look at, July and August. But so far, good trend. Typically, you're looking at 7 to 11% on claims being up. So to be 2% shows you what kind of year we had last year. But we also came off pandemic year last year, where the year before, no one could go to the doctor. So last year was probably higher inflated than normal. So hopefully that continues. Dental plan, you can see, I mean, year over year is almost a carbon copy, year after year after year after year. You can pretty much bank on total cost being exactly the same. Membership stays pretty much the same. We haven't raised rates, I don't think, since 2016. They've actually went down 2017, then they haven't changed. So we'll continue to maintain those. Still healthy balance. So overall, general fund, insurance fund are both very strong. Have a capital spending plan. You guys probably seen the turf and track out at the high school. We're gonna have some other projects going on this summer. So looking good. Any questions on the financials?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. And we're going to move on to our superintendent's report this evening.
Well, thank you, Mr. Butler. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to all our viewers tonight. Although it's summertime, I just want to reiterate to our community that the safety and security of our students and staff will always be our #1 priority. With the tragic events that occurred at the end of the school year in Texas, I just want to make sure that our parents understand that, it's our job to empower all students for success, but we also know that we have to make sure they feel safe and secure in school before that can happen. As you heard earlier from Mrs. Hunt and Mr. Morales of our mental health plan for the district, that is one step in the right direction, and hopefully we can really help our kids with their mental health as we move forward. And that's one way of making them feel safe and secure in the building. But we also do other physical things, as most parents know, keeping our doors locked during the school day once kids are there and they have to show their ID to get into the building. We have a full-time resource officer. Our staff is going to go through ALICE training, and we're going to retrain again this year in ALICE training, which stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And that will be done by Mr. Lolithan. So thank you very much for going through that training. And we'll be going to all the buildings to make sure that we retrain our staff with the ALICE type of training going on. We do a lot of other things in the buildings. I'm not going to go through them all because I don't want to compromise our safety and security plan. But truly, that is our #1 priority. We understand that we're here to educate our kids, but they have to feel safe and secure while we're here. And so with the addition of the mental health plan that we have in place, along with all the other security things that we have in place, we're hoping that when our kids come into our buildings and our parents bring our kids to the building, they feel safe and secure moving forward. We have great partnerships, as you heard earlier, with several different organizations throughout Central Ohio, and hopefully we will continue to build upon those. But more importantly, it's important for families to sit there and say, we're doing everything we can to keep our kids safe and secure moving forward. I know we possibly talked about adding an extra SRO to the school district, and that's something that I am looking into for next school year. And so once I find out more information on that, I will report back to the board. But we worry about a lot of things right now, and that's at the top of our mind to make sure that our kids are safe and secure moving forward. So there was a letter that went out a few weeks ago that's still on our website that gives you a little bit more information about what we're doing. So feel free, it's under the latest news, to go out there and read it. So that's all I have for tonight.
Mr. Sattler?
Any questions or comments? Yes.
How many resource officers do we have currently?
One school resource officer.
And so all of our buildings don't have a resource officer?
That is correct. Yes. And so we're possibility of adding an extra one. And one of the things that the Fairfield County Sheriff Department told me is it's not that they don't want to do it. It's like everything else. It's a staffing issue. It's a manpower issue. So they're looking at other ways that they can help us out. And we still have Madison Township, too, that we can go to and ask.
Does our one resource officer spend predominantly most of his time at the high school, or does he go around to the other buildings?
The idea is for him to go around to the other buildings, but this year he spent a large amount of time just at the high school. Correct.
And we did bring in another position at the middle school. It was a safety position up to my.
It's the actual title of the position, I'm not sure, but it's a support specialist type position.
And that was a former resource officer, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's something that I am looking into,
Okay.
working with the Fairfield County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, Vanjie, that's something that we had, in the liaison meeting, we had asked Jim to take a look at what the cost would be for a second SRO, if we could actually get another SRO, where that person would be stationed, and then again, the additional security person at the middle school. So if we are able to have a second SRO, we really have 3 folks within 4 buildings on the campus that what that would look like. Kind of like what we just did with the mental health program. We want to take a look at that for the safety security program as well, leading into next school year. So, yeah, so that's what Jim was looking at. So, yeah, and I think we would all be on board as a board to support and have discussions towards that, I would have to think.
So as I find
Thank
out more
you.
information, I will keep you informed.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sotler. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Sotler before we move on? No questions? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sotler.
We do need your tagline, Mr. Stotler. I haven't heard it yet.
Yep, you're not done yet.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. And I have it right here. It's at the bottom. And remember, make it a great day or not. The choice is yours.
There we go. Now we can train.
Thank you.
now we
Thank
can
you.
move on.
Thank you, move on. I forgot to go.
All right, so now we're
Thanks,
going to move
thanks
on.
for adding some lightness to the conversation.
Moving on to district report. So, does anybody have any questions this evening about our district reports? Okay. You do not? All right, so if there's no questions on the district reports, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. So I am going to need a motion on the consent agenda this evening,
So move.
and I will second that. Okay. And Mrs. Hunt?
Thank you. Number 1 is the minutes from the May board meeting. Number 2, we have administrative personnel. We do have 3 resignations from our administration. Bryce Culver at the middle school assistant principal, Rodney Harris as high school assistant principal, and Kelly Zipchek as the middle school principal. Moving on to number 3, we have certified personnel. You do see several resignations. In addition, a leave of absence for maternity leave. And you will notice our teacher recommendations. So those individuals, you can see to the right column with the other information, it will tell you the majority of those are due to resignation, transfer, or a leave of absence. And then we have stipends for the 22-23 school year. Again, those are stipends that we didn't, we were still looking to hire last month, so we did hire some of them at some of the buildings. And those would be the ones that we are wrapping up. We have extended days for Amy Byers and David King to work with Canal Creations. Moving on to number 4, our classified personnel. We do have a couple different resignations listed and some recommendations as well as substitute recommendations. Number 5, supplemental personnel. Again, following up, finishing off our supplemental positions that we would have for moving into the 22-23 school year. Number 6 is our substitute employee pay rate. This is something that we do ask you to approve each year. Those prices are all how we ended last year, except for the bus driver. If you recall, the bus driver sub rate is step 1 on the pay scale. So that did increase to reflect the step 1 on the pay scale.
Are we still looking for bus drivers?
We are still looking for bus drivers. If anybody's interested, yes,
Just wanted to check.
please apply online. Number 7 is overnight field trip request for Canal Winchester Middle School 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C. That will be next year, May 16th through the 19th. And then I'll pass number 8 on to Mr. Roberts.
Amending the fiscal 22 appropriations. Ohio law says you can have expenditures over appropriations, so this was just cleaning up, making sure none of that was happening. And then we've got temporary appropriations that allows us to start spending money July 1st, and then we'll do permanent appropriations by October 1st. It's just a spending authorization from the board. We can't write a check legally without having the appropriations approved and then legal status, so. Paid to participate fees. Mr. Sattler.
The fees stay the same for next school year, $150 for high school and $100 for the middle school students. And I want everyone to remember that money goes directly back to the athletic departments. That does not go into the general fund. So the money that goes pay to participate goes back into the athletic department, and then they do the money to make improvements or buy purchases for the athletic program itself. So it's no increase for next school year. And then private tuition contracts. And then we have the approval of the consent agenda.
So does anyone have any questions on the consent agenda this evening?
What's the private tuition contract?
It's for a
student-
student place for private tuition.
For private tuition at Hogland.
Is that for students that don't live in the district but want to go here, or?
No,
it's
that's one of our
resident
students
districts.
that goes to the
Special
special school.
services.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
yep.
Special placement services.
So our district can service them. They're
Yeah, they
new,
go
so
to-
we have to send them to
Oh, okay.
and yeah, we have to cover the cost.
So question on the pay to participate fees. Well, I guess two questions. So if we have a middle school student that participates in a high school activity, which pay to participate fee do they pay?
Yeah, can you give me an example? I don't know. if
Well,
middle
this
school
year,
student-
this year in particular, they're moving 8th grade band students to the marching band. So marching band pays pay to
They don't.
participate. Which one will they pay?
That's a good question. I was not aware that was happening this year. So if it's going to be a high school athletic,
I would think the high school.
then they would pay for the high school fee,
I
yeah.
would think. Okay.
Correct, yeah, the band goes into a band fund, its own separate fund, yeah.
But it's still pay to participate.
But it's
It
all
just
pay to
goes
participate.
If it's
Yeah.
at the high school, then they're going to pay the high school fee.
Okay. And we don't have any waivers for the pay to participate fees. Is that correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct, but I don't think we had anyone, I mean, we get volunteers, people have.
There's opportunities.
Yeah, donations to the department to help pay for that. And I know I've done that a couple times myself to help pay. So we have never not let anyone not participate.
Do we
because
have
of
any
that.
scholarships available for students who can't afford to pay?
We have scholarship money available. I don't know if we have used that for
We've never done
for
that.
that before. We have not done that
We used to have
before.
fundraisers for kids
Yep.
that couldn't afford it
Those
to.
kids can't typically do fundraisers, that's why I'm asking. Do we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
scholarships for them, or do we?
So we don't do that. We have not have, I don't know of anyone that has ever not participated because of the fee. It is, we do get donations from community members to help offset cost of stuff like that. So,
Do we get a report, and Pat, maybe you have or get some, it's not going to be a report, but maybe some back channel information on kids that are having problems paying pay to participate, something that comes up from the coaches? Something that we could just, I mean, word of mouth, try to figure out whether it's a problem, whether it's a struggle?
yep, come on up.
She wanted to stay in the back of the room.
I figured I'd be up here at some point.
I turned the mic off, so
Is it on?
No, it's on the bottom.
Figured he'd work his way up here to the
Yeah.
mic.
He was just inching closer and closer to the door, so I wanted to catch him before he was gone.
2 more minutes now.
Yeah, I know.
All right, pay to participate. Pay to participate. I will say a couple things about pay to participate. Number one, in the 6 years I've been here, the Board of Education has done extremely well making the pay to participate numbers go down. It was $300, I think, and then at one point it was $250, then $200. Now it's at $150. So I will say the Board of Education has done a great job of keeping the costs down for pay to participate, while every other school that has it is this way, we're this way. So that's number one. To answer your question of pay to participate, I go by the rules of what they are. If it's $150 for high school, then it's $150 for high school. Same with $100 for middle school. The only thing with pay to participate is basically if you pay 2, you get 1 free. If there's 3 sporters out there, you know, because right now they pay $150 for a fall sport. If they do a winter sport, they're paying another $150. If they do a spring sport, you know, that one's it. That's the only stipulation in the rules. So whatever the rules are, I follow the rules. I will say if there's students that can't afford it, it hasn't gotten to my level. Okay. Coaches have figured out donations, whatever it is, but it hasn't gotten to my level. But every year there are opportunities for individuals to do fundraisers to raise the funds to offset that. So we do offer that to students.
Okay. That's really kind of the point of my question. I just want to make sure we're not losing, a kid's not losing an opportunity to participate because $150 may be too much, and I agree. I think I paid $300 the first year my son was in band, so I appreciate that they've come down.
Right. Again, we're the only
Yeah.
negative trend in the OCC that I can see. Everybody else is going this way, especially with the current situation, and you all have done a great job of making that trend go the other way. So thank you for that.
So the only thing I would like to say, and thank you,
Thank you, Mr.
Pat, for that, because I know you definitely play by the rules. only thing I would like to say is, oftentimes when people don't have the funds and can't afford, they're definitely not going to come and tell you, as parents and or as kids. The pride gets in the way. And when you have 25% of our school district, that I have heard and been definitely approached many times by parents who say they can't afford it. When you have parents that are on Medicaid, you have parents that are getting food stamps, you have parents that are on Section 8. Those are not the parents that are out there working hard trying to go sell cookies. They're out there working hard to work 2 jobs to make the rent or to pay the bills or to be able to afford a car or whatever it may be. So I just want us to be cognizant of the fact that our school district is not made up totally of 2-parent household incomes where both parents are working, or there's a parent in the house that's making 6 figures and the other parent doesn't have to work. And that there are kids out there who may want to play sports. And if we don't put it out there that you should never be sitting at home because you can't afford to play a sport, come and ask us, then we're not going to get those kids to come and ask us. They're just going to stay at home and not play because mom and dad says, I can't afford it and you can't play. That's just going to be the end of it for those kids. So I don't know how we can tell kids that if they can show us that they can't afford it, or if there's a program we can put in place that looks at parent income, and maybe we have scholarships to pick 5 or 6 kids a year that can play sports because we know that they're athletic or they just can't play because of their income status, and mom and dad need help in this area. We can give them the cookies, but they may not show back up with the money. So I'm just saying, we need to just be cognizant and think of how we can help the students and not just shove it under the rug with no one's come and ask, because they may not come and ask. And if we put it out there that there are kids that may need the help, then we might get them to come and ask. That's all I want to say about that.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions or comments on the consent agenda before we move on? All right, perfect. All right, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Krueger,
Yes.
Mr. Butler,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0. And we're going to move on to action items. So the first one up is going to be employment of administrative personnel. So I'm going to need a motion on action item number 1.
So move.
I'll second.
Well, thank you very much. It is my pleasure to recommend Ms. Natalie Friend for the assistant principal position at Canal Winchester Middle School. Natalie has been with the district for over 9 years and is currently working as a teacher at the middle school. She is a very collaborative and empathetic leader who is committed to having a positive impact on the teachers, students, and parents at the middle school and throughout the district. So it is without reservation that I would like to recommend Mrs. Natalie Friend as the assistant principal at Canal Winchester Middle School.
Does anybody have any questions about action item number 1? Okay, if not, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. George,
Yes.
Mr. Krueger,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
And Mrs. Natalie is here tonight. Hi, Natalie. Stand up and say hi. So thank you for coming.
Motion passes 4-0, so congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right. And moving on to action item number 2, which is going to be our school resource officer contracted services. So I'm going to need a motion on action item number 2,
So move.
and I will second that one.
And again, this is for our school resource officer that we have in place right now. This is a contract for the 22-23 school year. That's a contract with the Fairfield County Sheriff's Department. So it's at $80,144, and that's for Deputy Mike Myers. He does a fantastic job for us. He had a very busy year this last school year with a lot of stuff going on, but he does provide a good service for us. Not only, I mean, he has a good rapport with our students, with our staff, and he does a great job for us. So I highly recommend him and continue that great relationship.
And Jim, this contract for the 80 is not going into Mike's pocket. This is going towards the
No.
car. I mean, that's included in the entire package.
That is everything. That's insurance. I mean, that's everything for 9 months that we cover for the sheriff's department, and including the car.
Yeah, so their costs are more than that. So, I mean, he's
Yeah.
only 80% here, and there's another 20% he's, during the summer, he's
Yeah, he's
doing other work for Fairfield County. So he's a
Yeah.
full-time employee for them, and they're allocating his services to us, and we're covering 80% of his costs, and the other 20% they're covering because he's doing additional work for them during our non-school hours.
And then we typically go through Fairfield County. That's just who we traditionally have gone through. I know it costs us a little bit less on Fairfield
Costs a
County
little
side.
bit less, but since Fairfield County Sheriff's Department, they have the substation right here. That's who the city has worked with. That's who we normally work with.
Well, I know.
Not saying that we can't go through someone else, but
Well, I know we've saved money. And when I first got here, I was always wondering that, like, oh, okay, how? And I knew we were in 2 different counties, but then I realized that we do save a significant amount of money that way. So that's just something to keep in mind as people look at the numbers. You know, there's some savings that we're trying to work in, so that way we can make sure that we're being good fiscal stewards along with providing those safety services. So
Do they have body cameras?
say that again.
Do they have body cameras in our schools?
I don't think Deputy Myers has one, or wears one, to my knowledge. I don't know if Fairfield County Sheriff's
I think they
Department
would.
requires them.
I heard that the county sheriffs were going to be getting them. I wanted to know if our resource
So-
officer has one.
He does not wear one right now. I'm not saying that in the future that he won't be wearing one. I don't know that, but he does not wear one now.
I think it's important that we influence that in the near future, if we can.
Okay. Thank you.
does anyone else have any other questions or comments on action item number 2? Okay, if not, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0. And then we're gonna move on to action item number 3, which is the Ohio High School school sanction for high school lacrosse. So I'm gonna need a motion on action item number 3.
So move.
Okay. And
Second.
Well, this is an exciting event for the lacrosse team. They've been at the high school now for over 2 years, and they've done an excellent job. Matter of fact, Coach Piney was nominated as he was the regional coach of the year in lacrosse. So the program is growing. They've done everything that we have asked them to do, and within the guidelines, after 2 years, if the program is proceeding and very successful, we turn it into a school-sponsored sport. The Ohio High School Athletic Association, and that's what we're doing here tonight. So congratulations to the lacrosse high school program. It's a big step for them.
Awesome.
Add it to the pay to play.
Yeah.
Pay to participate.
Pay to participate, yes.
And then I remember it's official at the middle school now, so now we're official at the middle school and the high school.
Correct.
Wonderful.
That is correct.
Awesome. All right, so is there any other additional questions on action item number 3? Okay, if not, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Kruger? Yes. Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. Okay, motion passes 4-0. And then moving on to executive session, there is going to be a need to enter an executive session. So I'm going to need a motion to enter into executive session this evening.
Motion.
Okay, and I will second that. Okay, so with a motion and a second,
I wasn't sure we were doing that without
well, I think
Mrs. Talley.
I think we're going to make it short. We're going to talk
Okay.
for a few minutes and then we're not going to do too much. We're just going to talk for a few minutes and then send them on their way. We'll come back next month.
Okay,
Yeah, when
sounds fine.
Mrs. Talley's back.
Okay, so no decisions will be made,
No
and
decisions
we're
will
going
be
to reconvene and then close from there, okay?
Sorry, so I'm going to need a motion to enter into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. So I'm going to need a motion on that one, and I believe I got a motion from
Ms. Barnes.
and
you second it.
I'll second that one. Okay, and that being said, we're going to enter an executive session, and just going to need a motion. I'm sorry, not a motion. I'm sorry, I'm going to need Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Okay, and we're going to enter an executive session at 8:10 p.m. All right, sorry, guys. Thank you.